Welcome to Nerdarchy, for nerds, by nerds. I'm Nerdist Dave, and today I'm hanging out with Aviad beyond the screen on YouTube. How are you doing today, sir?
I'm doing great. I'm so happy to be here. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, I don't even remember the video. I stumbled across it, watched the video, and I was like, oh, this guy's up and coming, and this is a cool video. And I thought I thought you did a really good job, so I was like, let's reach out and see if he wants to talk about some D&D and nerd stuff.
I'm always on for talking about D&D and nerd stuff. That's my thing.
And
Thank
so,
you.
and I don't think I've talked to any Israeli gamers yet. So I get to check another box. I'm collecting all the nations like Pokemon for
Yeah, you'll
gaming.
get them all eventually.
Yeah. Well, I feel like at this point I've probably gamed with someone on every continent but Antarctica. I'll find that gaming penguin someday.
Yep. It might be hard, but I think they're out there. If you look enough, we'll find one.
Yeah.
Definitely.
So, how did you get into YouTubing?
Into YouTubing. Well, it was a little over a year ago when I thought about this YouTube as a means to talk about DMing, to become a better DM, and share some of the things that I've learned, and also learn things from other people. Learn like when I think about a video, I do a research about it, and it kind of helps me understand what I am doing and if I'm doing anything wrong. So it was first and foremost a thing for me. Like I want to be good at this. I enjoy this hobby so much. I love everything about it. And YouTube seemed like a very cool way to do that. I really love some of the YouTubers out there, and I felt inspired. So I just started doing it, and here we are.
What is the D&D scene like in Israel?
The D&D scene in Israel. It's hard to answer that because I'm not sure how to compare, like, to what to compare it to. But we have conventions. We have a few of them. Well, not now, but
Yeah.
usually we have conventions like twice or three times a year. And like we have groups, like Facebook groups and other groups. We talk about a lot of people love to talk about theory
Yeah.
here, but I don't think that's unique.
No, it's definitely not. Wait, if you get gamers together from no matter where they are from around the world, they will argue about what's the best and how to do it and
Yep. What's the best way to build that? To build that story arc, to build that thing. It's like, yeah. And
so is there a lot of like organized play or like game shops?
there are not a lot of game shops, but they do exist. I know of like four, I think, but we're also very small. So it's like, you have one within like an hour's drive,
Yeah.
almost no matter where you are. So we don't have a lot of them, but we're small, tiny country. So you still got them.
Well, a lot of like the European countries are more like states here, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah, because of like geography and size and things like that. Like, but there are people here like they don't have any gaming stores, and when I grew up, there definitely wasn't gaming stores that you could just go pop into, and buy D&D stuff or even play a game or anything like that. That wouldn't even come around until much later in my adult life. I'm surprised when I meet someone who's my age and they talk about going to a gaming store as a kid, and I was like, because we had like bookstores where we go to, and they would have a small section for D&D, or maybe like your local comic book store might have a section.
Yeah, with also here we had like bookshops that had the D&D player's handbook or Dungeon Master Guide and Monster Manual. I think were the three that you could find in bookstores for 3.5. I think that was
Yeah.
when I was actually looking for them. I have them here actually in Hebrew. We didn't get a translate for 5e in Hebrew, but we did find them in bookstores, but yeah, we didn't have a lot of gaming stores. But there's also an age difference between you and me. So I suppose back in the day there weren't a lot of game stores also in Israel, but I'm not sure.
Yeah, I'm sure there probably wasn't either. Considering, but you were telling me you started gaming actually pretty young.
Yeah, I started playing when I was 7 or 8 years old. So we had this a group coming to a school with a bunch of flyers with dragons on them. And I took one of the flyers and I went back home and I gave them to my parents that I want to play this game. And ever since we went there to like it's an afternoon activity for kids, and I had an amazing DM that showed me my first steps to it. I played the weirdest characters as a kid, but it was a lot of fun. Yeah, I remember it. We're being heroes. We were fighting monsters. We were slaying dragons. Yes.
Do you prefer playing as a player or running games as a dungeon master?
Today I prefer running games. I enjoy the world building aspect. I really love building worlds and thinking about the small details that will make it feel alive for the players. Like this is I like it as a player, so I'm really excited to bring it as a DM. Like what can I add so this world feels more realistic or more probable? So yeah.
You generally play like homebrew stuff, or do you use like official content, like the official adventures and stuff?
I love to read a lot of the official stuff, but I rarely actually play them. I mostly homebrew. I read them for inspiration and to look how to build. Like when I read Dragon Heist, I look at how Waterdeep is built, and I'm taking notes on how to build a city and how can I build a city better. But I enjoy that process so much that I want to do it. It's
Yeah,
part of my fun.
that's very similar to how we do things in our games as well. We tend to homebrew everything and then just cherry pick ideas from the different official stuff and steal stuff. I mean, generally, I think when we get them, we generally just turn right to the appendix to see what the new stuff is as far that's been added to the game, like monsters and magic items and stuff.
Yeah, there's a lot of good stuff there. Um, I think that for most book, I read them, I go over them, and I look for the new things, for the interesting things, not just in specific monsters, but also like in styles, like in things that they chose to write this time that they didn't write before. So, like, what else can we add? What more
Yeah.
details can we bring?
What? So your homebrew? What kind of games are you playing? Is it standard high fantasy? Are you doing something different?
So it's a fairly, at the moment, a fairly classic heroic fantasy with some twists. I really like the idea of using spirits. I love them. And I'm slowly, as the game progresses, I put more of them into the world and trying to figure out how it influences and affects the world. So that's something that I feel is different in my world than in others. But otherwise, it's a fairly classic heroic fantasy with slaying dragons and fighting bad guys and all those crazy things that happens. Oh
So
man.
Elf Beta is a question for you. How does your real world cultural experience influence your gaming?
Oh, that's a good one. My real world cultural experience. I think as humans, as DMs, we are incapable of separating it. But like living in here in this country, I think we are interested in conflicts. Perhaps we are intrigued by them sometimes um, about the gray areas. I love moral dilemmas. I just they're my jam. And whenever I read news um, and see things happening, I'm trying to take that and translate that into my world and see where can I put this there. Like it's not something I do consciously, but back here when I'm thinking of new ideas, I'm sure it's there.
Yeah, I feel like the news is all can be a great place for inspiration as a DM and what's going on around the world. Sometimes you can take that stuff and tweak it and slip it back into your own game as inspiration.
Yeah, that's a great tool. Like also like the style. I think I have a friend that's called what I think is even here in chat, who's a historian, and he showed me a few weeks ago like something from ancient Greece, I think. And it wasn't the poems or things that they usually bring up, but something very daily, routine stuff. And I can't remember the exact detail, but it showed me like you can take whatever's going on right now and change it just a little so it fits the world and it still creates this very human experience. Humans are the same everywhere. We aren't so different, and well, we are different, but a lot of things stay the same. And it's really possible to create something unique from that mix, and I like that.
Yeah, sometimes it is those small details, right? That like you said, something that was kind of mundane, but you take that mundane and add them in as details in your game. A lot of times that stuff the players will really kind of gravitate towards and lock onto. Sometimes a little too much.
Yes, that goblin NPC is a lot more interesting than everything I had planned, apparently.
Yeah, the random thing that they put in, and I imagine that experience is probably pretty universal.
Yep, that happens everywhere.
So, on your channel, what kind of videos can people expect to find?
Well, I focus mostly on world building and storytelling, but that's a difficult term. But the reason I have to say it because storytelling is a tricky term, because we are not, as DMs, we're not telling a story. We are building a story with our friends. It's a collaborative thing. But I'm saying storytelling as in how to set the stage, how to make better descriptions and things like that. Also, but most of the things I do revolve around world building. So building cities, building cultures, building ecosystems, and stuff like that. I'm trying to inspire DMs to think about things that they don't usually think about, and giving them tools to do that.
The kind of sandboxy things that you can kind of drop in and let your players interact with.
Yeah, definitely. I like
Um,
those things.
I mean, I was having a discussion the other day with a new player, and they wanted to know if they did things right in the game. I'm like, there is no right or wrong.
Yeah.
It's just how your group handled it and dealt with it. I don't, I don't. Many times I don't figure out the solutions to the problems. I just present problems, and then the players will do their thing.
Yep, it's their job to come up with a solution. I love it. Definitely. There you can't go wrong with that, because uh, you create a story together, and the thing that you created is the right thing, because that's the point of the game, is to have create an experience with your friends and have fun. So you can't really go wrong with that as long as everyone is having fun.
Exactly. So Bob the World Builder uh, wants to know what's your favorite video you've made.
One of my favorite videos was 5 mid-campaign, like mid-campaign checkup. It's called 5 questions for a mid-campaign checkup. Yeah, got it. So a lot of times people talk about session 0, right? Like you see it all over the place, but we rarely actually talk about what happens months into the game, like 20 sessions in. And I think it's important to talk with the players sometimes and ask them a few questions to see how are they feeling about the game, if they enjoy what's currently happening, if they would like something specific to happen with their character, like something they expected and didn't happen. Maybe sometimes people, after these conversations, decide to replace a character because they realize they're not having fun. Or sometimes in these conversations, I figure out some of the group dynamic that doesn't really work. And we sometimes take that conversation and talk with the rest of the players and figure out how to create a better experience for everyone. So I'm running a group, for example, for 8 people. That's a large group. And the only way it's possible for us to run that game is sharing the spotlight. Like the players actively share the spotlight with others. And that way people don't feel left out because we talk about that. We talk about sharing it. So yeah. Not sure if
So
it's exact.
when do you usually do your mid campaign checkup?
So it's individually with each player, usually over like a chat and a phone or maybe a call, um, WhatsApp. Um, yeah, and there. And if we need to, we do that at the end of the next session with the rest of the group. Like if we have any conclusions that we want to share, we do that. And I think it's important also because sometimes players don't really know a lot about the game when they are in session 0, and it takes them a few months before they actually understand what the game is about and what is for them. And only then they are capable of truly telling us how they feel about it. And sometimes people are too shy to do that. Just if you don't ask them, they'll just keep it to themselves. So I'm trying to pry them, I poke them, tell me the stuff. I want to know. I want to make a better game for you. So
Yeah, I think another thing that kind of helps with that too is if you do like session recaps, but you have the players do them, and you just switch back and forth from the players so they can kind of. I like it as a DM because it just tells me what they thought was important.
yeah, it's a good one because you also get to like what did they remember, what did
Yeah.
they notice. Yeah, that's a nifty trick. I I like when we do session recap, like at the beginning of the session. I'm usually the one that tells them a bit about what happened because I wanna start strong. I wanna give them a good chunk of information, get them in the scene, get the music ready. But sometimes I let my play. Oh, here she is in the chat. My partner is here in the chat. She just told me that she does them sometimes. So sometimes I give the players to do the recap, and they do it in character, which actually is
Yeah.
hilarious.
Yes. It definitely can be. I've had players that will do it in character, and then also characters will just do it as the person, which is either is fine, whatever they're comfortable with. Um, in the one game that we have, Ted's really lucky because one of the players just has always just been a chronicler. So as a DM, that's such a nice tool because they're also very detailed. So they write it up. So and that's like for us. That's a monthly game. So that is so valuable.
Yes, that's so helpful. Just to have someone at the table that knows everything. But I have a few in most of my games, a few chronicles. But I still love to start it off like that. I don't know why. Maybe I'll change that.
Do you have a schedule for your YouTube channel?
I post a new video every other week. So yeah,
Bi-weekly.
trying
Okay.
yeah bi-weekly. Um, and sometimes I do streams. Whenever there's a new Unearthed Arcana, I try to do a live stream, and I missed the last one because of my semester finals.
Yeah.
So I'm still gonna do that. It's gonna happen.
Yeah, we end up usually doing a video on those, and they go up like a week later. I'm actually waiting for that one. That one was supposed to go up today, but it is still at the editor, so it is not back yet. What did you think of the last Unearthed Arcana?
The feats.
Yeah.
There are a few interesting ones. Um, there's the one with the sorcerer giving them or if you don't have sorcery points, giving you extra sorcery points. I think it's called Metamagic Adept. I'm not sure.
Sounds about right.
something on these lines.
Yeah.
And that's a really strong choice for a sorcerer sometimes, and I like that. Some of the feats I didn't like personally. Like there are feats that relate to specific types of damage, and I feel that can be a bit weird. Like if your barbarian took that feat and you're a slasher and you get a great like a warhammer or a giant maul, like magical item. Well,
Yeah.
you're stuck now. So that's a bit weird there, but some feats are really interesting. Is there anything from there that you like, enjoyed?
It was interesting to see the skill feats come back, but I felt like but they seemed like they made a lot of changes to them. And also like the warlock invocation feat was kind of cool.
Yeah.
And then we also got our magic initiate kind of feat for the artificer now.
Yes. Yes, that's cool.
Although I feel
That's
like
good.
that one would have worked anyway. Like we could have just used magic initiate and just picked artificer and it would work fine. The way it's kind of written.
Yep.
Um,
Just add the artificer into the list of that you can choose
yeah,
from, and it works. I feel that too.
but
Definitely.
yeah, but the biggest problem I feel like is with the now as we get more and more feats, we don't actually get that many opportunities to choose feats in the game. So now we have way more feats than we can possibly pick.
Yeah. I really like how they change fits between D&D, like the early D&D editions and now. Because right now, feats really define your character, most of them, like alert or like sentinel. It's a trait that you have, and having that trait is like almost defines that mechanic. If you're alert, you have bonus to the initiative. You can be surprised, as opposed to weapon specialization or like greater weapon specialization, like all those the fit trees that we used to have
Yeah.
or still have in Pathfinder. I like that change definitely, but we do have less of them. That's true.
It's no, it is nice, and it's this big block that affects your character definitively. Where before it was like, it was a bunch of minutia that eventually added up to something.
Yeah, it's like I want this fit. Like you look at the 17th level something.
Yeah,
I need to take that, build a tree just right so I can get that specific thing at level 17. And some players really enjoy that. I feel that because there's the game isn't there and those micro changes and it can be fun. But I find that sometimes simple is better when it comes to that.
yeah, and you know what? It's not. Well, actually, I would argue maybe they're actually more complex than they used to be in the sense that on an individual level, not like on the scope of the feat tree level. Individually, they're more complex because it usually does like two or three different things to your character. Where before it was like, here's a +2 to do this really specific thing.
Yeah.
And I still like while I like feats, I still think stat adjustments are generally better. Overall. But feats are very tempting because they tend to be cool and interesting. Like specific feats are very good, but in general, if you were to take a +2 to Dex and increase your modifier by 1, it'll probably overall do more for your character
Yeah,
than
if you put aside the lucky feat, then definitely everything you say is correct.
well, even the lucky feat, right? The lucky feat's amazing 3 times a day.
Yeah,
But if you look at something like increasing your dex, that's like every time you roll initiative, every time you make an attack roll, every time someone makes an attack roll against you,
that's true. That's
every
very
time you
true.
make a saving throw. So just like kind of like statistically, I think depending what stat and what you use it for, stats
Yeah,
tend
dexterity
to
is a big one.
But
Yeah,
and dexterity is also the super stat.
yeah, it's the best stat. Everything is dexterity.
Uh,
But yes, I get that. That's true. Even if for casters, like +1 to save DC, +1 to spell attack, maybe more spells. It adds up.
your skills, yeah. So just over time, they just get used more. So Bob wants to know, Bob World Builder, Any favorite
Well,
feats from 5e or older editions?
ooh. Hmm. Let's see. I like the Mage Slayer feat just because I had that on a rogue once. I had a rogue that really hated mages. He grew up in this town that there was a magocracy, whatever,
Yeah.
that ruled everyone, and there was like, if you're a mage, you can do this and that, and if you're not, you're nothing.
So he
And he
learned to
really
stab
hated
them
that.
really good.
Yep. Right, to stab him
Makes
really
sense.
good. It really
I
defined his character because otherwise he just hates mages. But no, he learned how to fight specifically against them, and that has a mechanic implication in the game, in the system.
I like the psionic feats from third edition because those feats actually like made your character do something different. Some of them were like just kind of like, oh, expend this, do extra damage, but other ones were like, oh, as long as you had your focus, your weapon's a boomerang, or you can run up walls, or.
I
But
I
I
don't
guess that was
remember
like
these.
another feat tree, I think.
That's cool. I've never ran into them, honestly. I've never
Oh
seen
yeah,
them
they
before.
so they were in the Psionic Handbook for third edition,
Okay, I haven't
and
had one.
so they did a cool thing where I get it was tied to a skill, and psionicists were a little bit better when they maintained their focus, but then you could spend it and have it go away, and then you could do something cool. But a lot of the feats were tied to that as well.
Hmm. You had
So
to choose how to spend that resource.
yeah. So that was kind of cool.
Yeah, that sounds really cool. Comparing to the psionics of fifth edition. Now, the Mystic had a few problems in five.
Yeah, I think it's going to be a while before we see that one. And folks, if you do have questions, just put Q in front of it or question in front of it. Makes it easier for us to pick them out. Dave wants to know: ever run without feats? Know anyone that does?
Uh, I actually always use feats, and I know of people that don't like them. I've seen them on Facebook. I know them, like, but I haven't played with them, so I can tell you if the experience is better or worse.
I've only played in one game where the the GM was not using feats, and I had initially built like a Viking type character using the variant human, which I had to just switch over. So I've played one game without feats, and all of our games are feats as well. I've played with GMs that give everyone a bonus feat at first level, but we just like options, so we
Yeah,
definitely prefer feats in our games.
yeah. It's another way to customize your character, and that's fun.
Jeremy wants to know: is there anything that you feel is missing from 5e that you'd like to see?
Wow, that's a good one. Anything that's missing in 5e? Well, I am planning a lot of homebrew. There are stuff that I'm homebrewing, and there are a few homebrew rules that I really enjoy, like some homebrews for counterspell and stuff like that. Because counterspell is just annoying. But
Yeah. So you're
no,
in the anti counterspell camp.
I am in the camp that says that counterspell is okay as long as it's not you don't. It's not the automatical use. Like if someone casts a spell you don't like, counterspell
Yeah.
always. Um, I I'm trying to figure out what's the best homebrew for that, but what I'm thinking about right now is having an implication for a failed counterspell.
Yeah.
So like wild magic, or I think I've seen that idea in like Jordan, PH is silent, that guy.
Yeah. Yeah.
Uh, I think he made a video about that, and I took it from there. So thank you. And I'll probably implement it at some point. But specifically in 5e, I don't know. I like the transition from prestige class to subclass. I think it makes a lot more sense. I feel that they did a lot of good things, and if there's gonna be a sixth edition, I'm not sure what they're gonna change.
Yeah,
I
I
don't
hear that
know.
a lot. Maybe they'll finally get rid of alignment.
Yeah, maybe.
They've taken all the teeth away from it. So yeah, counterspell is weird because if you right now, if it's a third level spell or lower, you just lose your spell, and that sucks when you're playing, right? Been on both sides of the screen for that, and we've also seen like counterspell ping pong where there was like four casters at once, like,
Yep.
and to see who finally like wins. But then like if you make it if you take too much away from it, then it's kind of a waste for the person doing the counter spell.
Yeah.
So it's really difficult to figure out what the right balance is.
I think adding an element of randomness, like maybe whenever you counter spell, it just the spell just goes off balance and something wild happens. It might be good for you, it might be bad for you. So you need to
Yeah.
think twice before you do that.
Or or I mean, you could do an opposed roll, but then what happens if you fail the counterspell? Did you just lose the resource? And that's the other thing. Like I kind of see it balancing itself out. If a caster does a lot of counterspelling, they're going to eat through their spell slots pretty quick. So, and also it's like, what are you going to do with your reaction as as a caster? Like, shield is always a good option, and so is absorb elements. And then you have counterspell, so you're kind of always vying for those things. Well,
Mm-hmm.
if you counterspell someone and then another creature uses an elemental attack, then you're going to just eat that damage that you could have absorbed instead. So,
Yep.
there's ups and downs to either way. So I guess in our game we don't really we haven't really cared about it that much. I want to say, and I've played a few wizards. Like my first main character was a wizard that I played from first to 20th level, and and it sucks when it happens, but it's not that big a deal. That's where being a having two levels of fighter comes in really handy. So when they counterspell your first spell, you can still cast another one.
Action surge.
Yeah, that's it.
That's amazing.
Um,
Yep.
so there's some more questions in here, and that will let's see. Nevat, I don't know if I'm pronouncing that wrong.
Navat.
Uh, do you like blending mechanics from other systems?
Yes. I'm trying to think of a specific one. I feel like I'm taking inspiration from like World of Darkness, for example. I've got a few of them here. I like that system a lot, but I'm not using a specific mechanic from there. I'm taking some of the things from magical items and ideas, but not mechanics specifically. I think mechanics usually, for me, jump in as like cool magic items or cool homebrew spells or something that a monster can do, and I find these ways to test them and see if they work. But otherwise, not a lot. I haven't changed the core rules of D&D that much.
Yeah, I mean, we haven't either. We've had looked at and discussed possibly using the light point, dark points from the Fantasy Flight Star Wars game. Um, and I think in our last game, Ted pitched it as the DM, but there was like no real benefit to us as the players. It was just like giving him inspiration to use against us, and we would get maybe a little bit more inspiration, but not enough for it to be worth giving to the DM.
Yeah, I see that.
So we kind of been like talking about thinking of ways to use that to make it a little bit more interesting and worthwhile for us for the players to arm the dungeon master with that tool.
Well, yeah, there's actually a mechanic that Navot actually was on an interview in my channel. We talked about deities and religions, and he suggested a mechanic that you gain these tokens of influence or like recognition whenever you do something to appease a deity. You get these tokens, and you can cash them in with a DM to influence the game in some ways. And you get the attention from a deity, and you don't always get the attention from the deity you intended. So attention can be a bad thing as well. So there are ways to lose and gain favor with the different divine entities. And that's interesting because I feel like mechanics, if you implement new mechanics, they need to like bring something in the game, in the story world, into your game, and make that happen. Like the purpose of a mechanic is to serve us as players playing the game, making the simulation feel more real for us. So a mechanic like that really emphasizes a world with gods and religion and that all that. And that's interesting to me. If you want to use that in the game, if you're going to use that, people will feel like the gods are influential. And that's interesting.
Have you looked at Mythic Odysseys of Theros?
I haven't yet.
So piety is actually in the DMG, but that setting really doubles down on it. So all the gods, you have a piety score, and depending on what god you're connected to or whatever, it affects how your character is. But there's also like supernatural gifts. So like everyone has this extra power, or it could just be a feat that you start off with. But there's also one that is like you just deny the gods. So you have like the anti-piety score. But as you do things, your score kind of like goes up, and it gives you more access to different abilities. So it's kind of similar to that.
That's cool. That's a way to emphasize something in the world through the mechanic. That's why I always felt that the purpose of the game mechanics is to relay the world that you want to play. So D&D has a lot of things for combat, which is why we do a lot of combat in D&D, but it's not true for other systems. Like a World of Darkness, for example, you still get combat, and you have a lot of things for that, but a lot of the powers, all of the game doesn't revolve around that at all. The politics, social things, but you rarely get a D&D game with no combat at all, right?
Yeah. Do you usually play online or offline?
When I can, I play offline. But
now we're all playing online.
Yeah. I have two groups that I run a game to. One once a week, every other week. So I get a group every week.
Okay.
And we meet physically when we can. I like that. It's seeing people in person is better, I think. But otherwise, playing online gives me the ability to play with people from across the world. Like I could play a game with you and more amazing people from abroad, and I probably couldn't do that otherwise. I have to fly.
Yeah, everyone would have to fly. which is cool. I mean, the online aspect of gaming it opens up that you're who you can game with, for sure. Yeah. So, are both your games that you're running D&D games?
Both of them are D&D. Both of them happen in the same world. So things that one of the group does influences, like ripples and influences some things that the other group encounters. So that's interesting.
Yeah, we're playing a couple regular D&D games, and then we also just started playing the Expanse.
All right.
Which is
that's a sci-fi, right? That's a sci-fi game.
Yeah, it's sci-fi. There's tons of media. There's like comic books, novels. There's the show on Amazon that's pretty good.
Yeah, I've heard the name, but I actually never seen or read any of it. So I'm completely oblivious. Yeah. Except it's sci-fi, and that's cool. That's always cool. So what are you playing in Expanse?
So the game is fairly rules light. So that game is like factions. You have Mars has been colonized, and then also like we've colonized like asteroids and space stations, and those are Belters, and then you have the Earthers, and we're playing all Belters. And the Belters are like, they make me think of like space hillbillies, kind of.
Oh, all right.
because they're like laborers, miners. They're out on the belt, mining resources from the asteroids and stuff.
And doing all the things for the people on the planets.
Yeah,
Doing all the
except
dirty
for
work.
so for Mars is separated from Earth, and the belt is kind of separated from Earth as well. But they're kind of reliant on both of those different factions because they have resources that they need like water and air, and they use it to control the Belters, even though they're their own separate faction.
Hmm.
So
Yep.
yeah, we've played one session so far in a session 0, and it's been a lot of fun. The show's really good too. Definitely, if you're looking for something to watch, I recommend it.
All right, I'll definitely put it in the list then.
But
That's great.
it's Green Ronin puts out the Expanse, and it's their age system, which is it's kind of cool. It's 3d6. You add them up and use a modifier, but use 2 dice that are the same and 1 that's separate. So the separate die is considered your stunt die, and if any 2 dice show the same number, then you look at your stunt die and it gives you a number of stunt points that you can then spend to do something, depending on what it was. And like, there's all kinds of different charts.
Do you influence the same role with that?
Yeah, it influences the same
Alright.
role.
That's cool.
Sometimes
cool
the
way to
stunt
go
might
with
be like, oh, you can influence the next thing you do, but it's a fun part of the game, but it's also a part of the game that kind of slows it down a little bit because it's like stunts for melee attacks, stunts, general attacks, ranged attacks, investigation, stealth, social
when he said-
interactions.
When you said stunts, my mind immediately went to Exalted, where you if you describe something with enough enthusiasm, it's cool enough, you get more dice to roll.
Oh yeah.
The stunt dice. Exalted is basically anime, like play an anime character. That's cool.
Yeah, I have not tried that yet. I have a weird relationship with the World of Darkness settings. I like them, but I don't like the fact that they're individual. Like they're each their own a separate setting and system.
We growing up, like after playing D&D until I was like maybe 12 years old, we shifted to playing World of Darkness. I had this, it's called the Storyteller in World of Darkness. This wonderful storyteller that taught me a lot. And he did everything in the same world. You had vampires, werewolves, changelings, mages, all in the same world, and it somehow still worked. It was a mess, but it was a beautiful mess.
Yeah.
And you had, the thing is, some people say that it's not balanced, but in War of Darkness, it's not supposed to be balanced. It's like if you're playing a vampire, you will be stronger than an individual werewolf, for example. But the strength of a werewolf is the pack. And so it's not balanced. Like, we love to have D&D like a balanced game.
And then, if you're playing a mage character, they're just ridiculous.
Yeah. So it's possible to create a world that combines all of them, and I like that. When I ran World of Darkness, I actually ran a hunter's game. So it was all humans playing in the police department, in the homicide department.
Yeah.
And they were investigating crime scenes, and little by little they discovered the like a magical dark world that actually exists around them.
That definitely sounds like a fun game. We did do one attempt at mixing the things together. And it was a mess. It was fun. Unfortunately, it didn't last very long. I don't know. Like, I think like most groups, you just have like, you end up with tons of games that get started but never finish or never go very far.
Yeah,
it seems
I think
to be the
most happens for many groups. That's very true.
Yeah, the only way we've ever gotten games that have gone from level 1 to 20 was for us to run them once a month, and we would just alternate DMs, and each DM would just play a different game.
Mhm.
and that made it really easy to not get burnt out or get bored with the same game. It
Yeah,
also made it move very slowly, but
because you're like, what happened last time? It was so long ago.
yeah. I mean, there's a combination of what happened last time because it's been a month since you got together, and and just like it takes forever to get from level 1 to level 20. Like the first campaign we ran like that was for it went for like probably like 4 years. And when Ted started that game, all the books weren't even out yet. We just had the player's handbook uh,
Really?
when we
So
first
wait,
started.
you from level 1 to 20 with XP
No, we
or
did
with milestone
milestones. Well,
milestones? Okay, that's much better. But with XP, that's very impressive. If that were it's like so many things slain.
so
Whew.
many, all the violence. Now I want to say milestone. So like we would basically level like every other session.
That's fair.
With maybe some longer gaps in between, but
Usually my rule for milestones, I try to like when it works for the story, but like for every level I do that many sessions. So
okay.
for level 5, it's usually 5 sessions before you level to level 6. So I do
19
like
sessions to get to level 20.
we're running. We have a game. We have a game that's
What
running
is the
for
math on
3
that to level
years.
20?
Yeah,
Chat,
that's a
somebody
good one.
math that for me. Level 1 through 20. No, I mean that's a cool rule. Um, but that would take a lot of sessions.
Yep.
But I mean, if you're
So
going through,
we're playing. We used to play every week with that campaign. So they are now level 13, I think.
yeah,
We've been playing for 2.5, maybe 3 years. It's fun. It's a fun one.
do you usually
But
start at level
yeah,
1?
usually yes. Level 1 is fun. They're scared,
They're scared. Yeah.
and that's good. They should be.
I don't know. We haven't done level 1 in a while. The game I just started running, I actually ran the first session this Saturday. They started at level 3.
That's a good level to start in. If everyone's familiar, everyone gets their stuff already.
Yeah, I guess the thing that about level 3 is like that's the level when no one's really like an apprentice anymore. They have their subclass.
Yeah, that's true.
So yeah, I think people kind of enjoy that.
What are you playing that game?
I'm the dungeon master. I'm not playing.
Oh,
So yeah, so that's we're running a quarter worms game, and is what it's called, and it's all reptilian races.
that's cool.
There's
So like kobolds, dragonborns, lizard folk.
yeah, humans are like really primitive. The other races aren't really there. One of the character is playing a human that was stolen as a baby by one of the other characters. And kind of keeps because so the main races are kobold and dragonborn, and then there's like dragon emperors that kind of rule the different cities,
Mm.
and they refer to the humans as hairless apes because they're all kind of like tribal and primitive.
They don't have scales.
They do not have scales, and they don't actually have enough hair to be apes. So
Yeah,
hairless apes. It is, and like the buildings are, the buildings and a lot of the aesthetics are kind of like influenced from feudal Japan, and then the religion is based off of the five elements instead of the gods per se.
that's cool.
Yeah, and the dragon emperors aren't like typical dragons; they're almost more like celestial beings than dragons.
Cool. I like that.
So yeah, like so I pitched them like four different ideas, and that was the one they wanted to play.
Now my brain is like racing around. How would a world with reptilian races that rule look like? Like what would be different in the
Right.
day-to-day life for them? Like maybe they're do they have warm blood or cold blood, and how does it affect them?
So
Like all over the place.
The way we have it is like our dragon emperors lay eggs, but they lay a bunch of them at once, and when they do lay them, and mostly kobolds and dragonborn hatch from those eggs.
Ooh.
It's very rare for an actual dragon to hatch from them, and also like occasionally a kobold will ascend, and it will become a dragon wormling.
That's cool.
So there's very few true dragons, and they have not encountered any yet. I mean, they just started. So like it's kind of like a segment of our regular campaign, and in our regular campaign, like all the dragons were banished, so we had this like one valley where they enacted this veil that kept them from being banished, but it also had other like side effects on them, like they can't just straight up birth dragons anymore.
Mm-hmm.
So
So it's a point of conflict within the game.
yeah.
That's good. So you can really play on that. I like that. That's a cool idea.
No, Bob, there is no heart included. So yeah, so the elements, depending on what culture you look at, are a bit different. They chuck air,
Yeah.
and they add in metal and wood.
Right. That's
So
the Chinese way, I think. Right. The Chinese elements.
yeah. So we're playing with some different elements to make it a little bit different. Yeah, describing their armors they're using more of metal mixed in with lacquered woods, and not just straight the Western European style armors. But
Yeah.
I mean, all the changes are mostly aesthetic.
That's important. It helps people imagine that, and if they imagine that, they already have there, right?
Yeah. So
It's like,
the kobolds are kind of like the merchant and crafting class, and then the dragonborn are basically the soldiery.
well, they're bigger.
Yeah, and
That
then
makes sense.
and then like and then everything else is mixed in. So we've got two players that are playing Yanti. We have a lizard folk artificer, but instead of crafting with metal and wood, you basically mostly work in bone. Using like the what is the skill that lizard folk get, where they can just craft stuff.
Yeah, I don't remember the name, but they can spend like a short rest and craft something, anything from remains. Yeah.
So basically they're taking that to the extreme and using it for artificer, and they're playing a battle master. So they basically crafted essentially a bone golem instead of the iron defender.
That's amazing. Dave, do you have grungs in the game?
No one is playing a grung, but that was an option.
Oh my god.
We have a dragonborn and a human as well. So
just the option of playing a grung is so funny. I want to try it one day just because they're cute. I don't know. I like them.
Yeah, we played a stream game with Esper the Bard, and our website editor and content manager played a grung. I forget what class he was, but unfortunately his grung did not make it past session 0, because session 0 we also did a little bit of a dungeon delve, and the grung got murdered. So and one of the grung didn't speak common, so one of the other players had their character take grung just so they could talk to him.
Oh my, that's amazing. Dying at the first session, that's brutal. Oof.
Yeah. Well, the second session didn't go much better because 2 more of us died in that session. So Esper was brutal. Once he went down, he would just have the enemies off you.
They keep smashing, eh?
They kept smashing, yeah. But whatever, just pull out another character, keep going.
Yeah.
So
it's interesting.
Well, there's a lot of different play styles.
Yeah. I feel like if people really invested time in writing a backstory and figuring it all out and then dying in the first session, that would suck. But if your game is more fluid like that, and characters are gonna die, brace yourself. So you prepare for that, and then it's all good, right? As long as you know that in session zero, that's great.
So, Bob has a question. Excluding other RPGs, what's your main inspiration for games, mechanics, or world building?
Books, okay. So I'm reading right now. Sanderson, Brandon Sanderson is one of my favorite authors, like of all time, and I'm reading. I've read the Mistborn, both trilogies, and now I'm going through the Stormlight archives, and it's just brilliant. I like the way he thinks and the way he builds worlds. Books, 1,000 times.
I I actually like am more likely to take nowadays more likely to take from just what's going around. Like we did a video on junkyard harpies, and I was listening to the show on my way over to shoot videos one day called Car Talk, and it's just like these two brothers that talk about cars, and people will call in and be like, "Hey, I got this problem." I'm not even like a motorhead or a car guy at all. I just like that show. And you know, on that particular episode, they're like, "Don't let those junkyard harpies get you when you go to the junkyard." And I was like, "Oh, that needs to be a thing."
Yep,
You know,
actual harpies.
yeah, yeah. So you know, so we made this like part of our world called Fausthaven that has like the Underdark has been like infused with a layer of the hells, uh, and it's just this like basin in this Arctic region, but in the basin it's warm because it's heated by hellfire, and the citizens they take these steam vents and make like steam powered stuff from it, so it's kind of like industrial as well.
Ooh.
And but in the Underdark there's a mock city of the city above where like devils all live, and they kind of like have these mock lives where they live like the citizens from the world above, and you know, and also like it's a great place to go if you want to get a warlock pack or make deals with devils. um,
And then
but
like fine with the city that's above them of humans, like yeah.
well, you know, they look at it as a place for well, they it's a place to make deals. So
Oh,
you know,
right, it's a source for souls.
yes, exactly. So they're always trying to corrupt people and get them to come down, and you know, and it's like a place where it's like industrial, but there's also like we kind of like envision it a little bit like Las Vegas.
Hmm.
Uh,
That would that be the devil city or the one above?
both a little bit.
Both. All
Yeah.
right, all right, all right.
So, but then they have like the junkyard is like all the cast off stuff for the industrial um, parts of the city, and that's where our junkyard harpies are. And like we figure like there's like slums over there where goblins and kobolds and you know different races kind of mingle,
I love
and the
that.
harpies kind of run it. And like one of the things is like there's a in the junkyard there's this cast off arcane machine from like another age where it's basically a giant arm, and you know the harpies they use their song instead of luring people in to animate stuff, so like they animate the arm and use it basically like a big like crane or something to move stuff around or smasher. Yeah.
Nice. That's so cool. That's a really unique thing to do,
So
and it's all from that show that you've watched and loved.
yeah,
That's a,
yeah, so I get inspiration from weird places sometimes.
that's the best. Inspiration is out there. Like, just look around you and try to see how that would work in your world, and you get so many cool stuff.
So, Chris, we got. I guess we'll take one more question. Chris wants to know what novels would you recommend someone read who wants to run a D&D with a Middle Eastern theme?
I don't feel like I'm the right person to answer that question. I haven't read a lot of Middle Eastern games. Middle Eastern, like, oh, all right, all right. I felt like Asian for some reason.
That's
Middle
fine.
Eastern.
Or is it like that stuff is like, well, that's where I live, so I do something completely different because
Yeah,
it's
I do
fantasy
that.
for me.
Right. That's very true. I think, actually a good way to go about it would be some of Neil Gaiman stuff, and Neil Gaiman and Terry Pratchett, they have the Good Omens one. It's more Christian in vibe, but a lot of the base of it is similar. Um, I don't know. That's a good question. I'll have to whoever asked that, I'll check and I'll answer you. What's the name here?
Christian. Let's see.
I'll put it in
Chris.
the comments
Chris
of that
Hasnick.
of Chris. I'll put this in the comment of this video once it goes, like once it stays on YouTube. I'll find that book. I'll ask around and I'll give it to you as I'm actually writing it down right
Notes are being taken. So we are right up on the hour mark. Final words before we head on out.
now. Sure. Yeah, I'm starting a Patreon in a few weeks, and it would be cool if you check it out. That's all.
Also,
I
in the
It was lovely
description,
being here.
and later in the pin post, there will be links so you can check out Beyond the Screen. I highly recommend it. Go take a look. Thanks for coming on, Avid. I really appreciate it.
Thank
It's
you.
been great chatting with you. And to everyone else, until next time, stay nerdy.
Bye.